Number 54, if a point is on the x-axis, it has no height, meaning the y is 0. And if the point is on the x, let's do that backwards. If the point is on the y-axis, it hasn't moved left or right at all, so the x-coordinate is 0. Guys, do you have to have these exact words in 2 snazzy sentences? No, but I do need to see the idea. Any more evens?
50.
Oh, he's right over here. 2, 3, 4, 1. 2, 3, 4, 1. Yes, there are reasons. Check the matching first. 2. You guys know I'm just reading the Roman numerals, right? 2, 3, 4, 1. Although, hold on, this one rings a bell. I'm kind of sad that it's missing. Is there a typo in this problem? If not, there's a very similar problem later on this year that has a typo. Here's a typo. Does one of those stay the same or something? Scary, I know this. Yeah. Hold on, there's a typo in this one. Every now and then it happens. They release this book really fast. And because this homework page is missing, the corrections I did make are not in the first answer. Alright, switch it up. Do you guys see the typo? Anybody who has their books, can you open it up real fast? There's literally a typo in the textbook. Nice. Okay, so some of you got it. Good. But some people didn't change their book last year. Maybe they had it at home, and so they never changed what they were supposed to. Turn to page 10. Letter A's option. There's a typo. Look at the answer key as to what's supposed to be letter A and what's written as letter A. Last year I had anyone who had their textbook cross it out and change it, but some of you might have gotten a textbook that either wasn't in use or wasn't, maybe it's from Mr. Che's class, they might not have crossed it out. If any of your books do not have letter A, do not have it changed to be negative y sub 0, can you please go ahead and do what others did? You can use a pen. It is an official change. If it's already changed, perfect. If it's not changed, you can use a pen. Letter A. This is the problem for letter A. What's stated is x sub 0, y sub 0, which would be the same point, and that's not the point. That is the exact same. We need it to change. What's supposed to be printed is x sub 0, negative y sub 0. So if your book is not changed, please go ahead and change it. Then it will match with the options that I gave you. Because if the y is negative, then it'll be the exact same point but flipped down. Instead of going up y, you'll go down y, and that's why it matches with little double I, or little 2. Does that make sense? So if you have not changed letter A's question to reflect, please do so now, x sub 0, negative y sub 0. Okay, any more evens? Nope, that's it. Okay, questions on homework? Did anybody have to mark anything wrong? It could have been something silly. Okay. For those of you guys that are like, I got everything right, how do you show me you got everything right? Well, yeah. So it's not just cheating, that's true, right? You don't just want to be like, hey, look, it's all the right answers, and then keep going, and then there's no work shown. That's just like, one in a teacher's mind. But number 2, you can always put a colored pen check mark at the top of the assignment, and like, I got that all right. And then I know that you agreed with us, and I will give you points for correcting as opposed to taking off points for skipping correction. Does that make sense?
I have a question. On number 58, could you explain, like, for anyone then, how...
Okay, how it was done?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little abstract. Let's peek at it. Okay. 58 gave us, whenever you see how do you see it, it's definitely going to be something abstract. Maybe I should just pull this up. So you guys, hopefully if you have not yet already, and if you have your book, you've already changed this to reflect x of 0, negative y. Okay. Why is it a little bit hard? Where are the numbers? They're gone. We only have variables. So, if we only have variables, we just have to think about something like, for any point that's in the second quadrant, someone tell me the one thing that we know, well, the two things, they're technically two things, that we know about the x coordinate. If it's in the second quadrant,
Negative.
the x is negative and it's not 0, right? So it's a negative non-zero. If it was 0, it would be actually on the axis, which is different. So, x is a negative number that's not 0. What do we know about y? Y is positive. If it helps your brain to make it concrete, you can guess a point like, I don't know, let's do 2 tick marks. Negative 2, positive 3. Sure. And then you could say, hey, let's go ahead and take that concrete point that is representative of the idea, a negative x and a positive y. That's shown. And so then for letter A, well, A is a horrible example because it might have been a typo in your book. But for the new A, if x in your concrete example, negative 2, 3, if x is negative 2, well, x stays negative 2. X stays the same. But if x was positive 3, what just happened in this point? It became a negative 3. So you could say, okay, well, negative 2, negative 3. Or the x is still negative, but if the y was positive times a negative, now it's negative. So you can think of it that way, if that helps a little bit. So you can actually kind of like in your homework, not on the book, you could think of something like 2, negative 3. Sorry, negative 2, 3. And you can actually plug it into each of these expressions. And then you can go ahead and just think of, basically, if you guys notice, these are all in different quadrants, so you're just trying to kind of figure out the general location of where it would be. So this one, if the x is still negative and the y becomes negative, that'd be the third quadrant, which must match with the only one that's in the third quadrant. This one, if I have a negative x times a negative 2, well, negative times a negative is a positive. And I still have that positive y, so I'm going to have a positive x, positive y, probably a little bit higher. Anything in the first quadrant? There we go. Does that kind of make sense? So whenever it gives you an abstract idea, you can always think of a specific example. And if you do think of a specific example, it might not always be exactly true, but hopefully it'll at least give you an idea to build off of if you don't know how else to approach it. The other way was just to think of negative number, positive number, and try plugging in and just checking the signs. Any other questions from homework? Going once? Going twice. If you have anything else, I'm always here during lunch after school. Lunch. If I'm not here, I'm just running to the restroom or getting food. But I should be coming back. All right, cool kids. Let's go ahead and section 1.2. I need to get this fixed in. How much? So I'll leave that open. Is this anything you want to talk about? A lot of this has kind of changed over the years. You guys don't need to be doing headings because it's in your homework notebook now. I didn't used to do a notebook before. So we can kind of just go ahead and cross through all of that. You guys know I do want the homework number and I want the actual assignment written out. We talked about that yesterday. Spot checks, that's an example of which I might get you started on notes and say, hey, keep your homework out. I'm walking around the room, but we talked a lot about logistics today, so I'm going to go ahead and table that for another day. Spot checks done on the fly, not really announced. Maybe every now and then I give hints on especially hard homeworks, etc. But usually if it's a spot check, I'm just giving you 2 points for the assignment. A, have you fully attempted it? Meaning you might have like 1 or 2 you got stuck on, but you fully attempted everything else. And B, not just answers, but you've actually put thought and work into it. Does that make sense? Okay. But when you turn in for a homework packet, each assignment is worth 4 points, so everything's worth double. Incorrect formatting you shouldn't really have to worry about. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But I do look that, ooh, that's a question mark. That you fully attempted it, that you showed your work clearly. If it was an easy problem, no, you don't. If I asked you to graph a point, you don't have to describe to me how you graph the point. However, there is one thing that we haven't talked about yet, and so because of which you didn't have to do it on homework 1, but what's this say? Why am I saying that? A, so you don't really have to bring your book to class every day, because if you have the summary of the problem, you could go ahead and refer to the problem without having to open your book and look at it. B, if you ever want to go back and study your homework, you wouldn't have to open up your book and turn to the section, which makes it much less likely that you'll ever look at your homework and study from it. So if it's actually in the homework, you can study the problem and the solution and your mistakes and how it should have been done all at once. And C, if I make you write the problem and the directions, I make you read the problem and the directions that some of you don't like to do, and then you skip important things. Now, hold on, pause, because some of you are like, this stinks. When I ask you to write the problem and the directions, I just closed out the book. Let's open it real fast. Let's use, for example, let's do number 58, but then let's use another one first before number 58. Because I'm not literally asking you to rewrite the book. That is not what I'm asking you to do. Let's go here. Okay, for example. Did you guys have any vocab you had to do last night? Oh, well, that's not fun. If you did have any vocab, I don't just want the word. I want the word, colon, and a quick summary of what was describing it. Does that make sense? Do you have to write the period? Do you have to write all of the a and ands and thes and ins and no? You can summarize it in your own words. You can summarize it in your own words. Should you understand it somewhat?
Yes.
Nice. Okay, but as we got down here, so starting in homework number 2, do I want you to literally, in gray, write finding, okay, not in gray, number 1, but number 2, finding the coordinates of a point. In exercise 7 and 8, find the coordinates of the point. No. What do I want you to actually put? I want you to put find coordinates. Or you can say find point. Okay? Then you do the problem number. And then you can say 3 left of y, 4 above x. And then answer. Does that kind of make sense? Shortcut it. Definitely shortcut it. Save time on that. But by you writing down just a few words of what are you supposed to do. Now, if I gave you 7 and 8, do you have to write this twice? No. Don't waste time. Just do find points, 7, go, 8, go, quick summary, answer, quick summary, answer. What are you supposed to be doing to answers anyway? Boxing them is my preference. I guess you can circle, but in my mind, circles look like zeros and that just gets confusing. So anyway, boxes are a little bit nicer. But you should be boxing your answer anyway, and that will make it stand out. What would you guys then, how would you summarize this whole paragraph of directions for this section?
Determine quadrants.
Sure. I would probably say find quadrant or find quad. Right? Like you can shorten it. I don't mind shortening. That's okay. I actually have some calc kids. If you guys know Cassie Russell, you can ask her about her math class in college. She actually kept doing this in college when she didn't need to, because it just made her feel like she was getting work done before she had to solve the problem. But anyway, you might not all be like that, but it is kind of nice to make you think through the problem before you solve it. Okay? So starting in homework number 2, I do want a quick summary. Now let's go look at number 58 for a very particular reason. Did I want you to literally draw little glasses in a huge old box and give me a paragraph and give me all of these figures? No. What do I want you to do? Match transformations. Explain. That's good. Match transformations. Explain. That's the whole paragraph, right? But do I want to see the sketches? And the answer is yes. Now, do you have to draw all the sketches and then write all of these down and then fill in the letters? Or could you just label this with this and that with this and this? Like you can actually manipulate the problem a little bit and put this answer next to this graph. But I do want the original graph and I do want the following whenever there's a graph. Last one. What if I was to give you number 30? Number 45. Word problems? You don't have to write the whole word problem. I want you to pick out what is the most important information. If it's something crazy like this, if you want, you can do it. And then, I don't know if that's going to help you at all. You don't necessarily have to give me everything that's given in a word problem, but what I do want you to do is, like in geometry, you guys remember when you're doing 2 column proofs? And you had given, and you had proved. Isn't that something you had to write before the 2 column proofs?
Yeah.
But wasn't it in the problem? Same thing here. I want you to read the word problem, whatever it is. I want you to pick out what are the givens. What is the data or the information I'm supposed to use? So you can write given and give me the important, doesn't have to be in sentence form, doesn't have to be words, doesn't have to be with all the snazzy like extra adjectives of what's going on. You don't have to talk all about Naples, Italy. All you have to do is give me the important givens and then go ahead and try to do the find or whatever they ask you to do. Does that kind of make sense? So please, please, please don't take away from this that you're writing paragraphs of information every single night, every single homework problem. That is not the point whatsoever. And if you have any other questions as to why I require that, feel free to come on by. I'd love to explain it more. It is not meant to make your life awful, I promise. But it's too often, especially in AP Calculus, I have kids who only try to do the math and not understand it, and it ends up just totally messing them up because they don't have the comprehension. So this is a way to slow you down and to have you actually read the problem.
So for the homework titles, do you want us to like write the title of the lesson, or can we just put page number and like the numbers?
Make sure you do the homework number, like homework 1, page, and then the problem numbers. We don't have to do any titles. That's okay. Any other questions real quick?
So how many points will you take off if you don't write the questions?
Well, it depends. If it's like the first time, I'll probably just take off, let's see, the homework is worth 4 points, and it would be when you turn it in for a homework packet. I wouldn't notice it until then. I'd probably take off 1 point each homework assignment, which could definitely be bad. But then if I see you doing it multiple times, I'll stop grading your homework until you start. All right, cool kids. Section 1.2. If you guys can tell, I'm not sure we'll finish this section, but we'll try. Thanks for sticking it with me with all the different logistics. If you guys want to see, all I've put right here is, hey, table of contents. Remember, from now on, get it set up. Page number, I don't know. Maybe use only 1 page, so you're on page 2 for section 1.1. Maybe use 2 pages, now you're on page 3, etc. You do whatever or wherever you are at. Does that make sense? Good checking. After this section, I will never again remind you to update your table of contents unless it's review day for a test and I'm like, okay, you better make sure you're ready for tomorrow when you turn in your notes. Here we go. Section 2. Starts off pretty easy. Basically vocab. As you guys said in your notes, if you had your book in class today, I think I asked you to bring it. Can I go ahead and see it real fast? And if you did not bring it today, if it's at home, that's technically where it's allowed to be for most of the remainder of the year. But you better email me a picture of that book nice and covered by 11:59 tonight. Let me see. That would work too. Perfect. Thank you. Good. Email me a picture. Have it done by tonight. Good. I knew with grading our first homework today that a few more logistics would need to be covered, hence why I didn't have the due date quite ready up here. But we're honors, right? Let's see if we can do this. Yes, same thing goes for notes. You don't necessarily need to write this entire example just as an illustration. You could say, is 1/4 a solution to, right? You can shortcut solution. Competitions are all about shortcuts as long as they get the idea across. You can write solution as an abbreviation. Like, you guys can definitely shorten things, just don't leave out whole categories. Okay? Don't leave out whole examples just because you assume that you know it all. Alright, here we go. When is a point a solution to an equation? What kind of statement must it result in? If you don't know, so here's an example below. How could you guys test whether 1-4 is a solution or not? Yeah. Plug it in, plug it in. You want to write yourselves a note? Wait, I think I said plugging in, right? I just crossed it out. Plugging in is what you want to do. You could plug in 4 equals 7 minus 3 times 1. PEMDAS would have you multiply first. 3 times 1 is 3. 7 minus 3 is 4. Is it a solution? Why? It resulted in a... You could say equal statement. I think I'm going to put a true statement. You guys want to think just because you're honest? Forward in math a bit, or backward in algebra 2, we're talking about systems of equations, and if all the variables canceled out and you got a true statement, there were infinitely many solutions. True statement, there are solutions. There is a solution. And in this context, it is a solution. False statements, yeah, I know. Not going to work out so hot. But easy stuff, right? Vocab, solution. Solutions are points that work in equations. Now, sketching graphs. Are we going to talk about parent functions? Are we going to talk about vertical shifts and reflections and absolute value transformations? Yeah, all of it. Are we doing that all in section 2? Not necessarily. Because we have a lot of basic functions to review. Everything from lines to logarithmics and everything in between. Ooh, and trigonometric graphs. So, before we go too much in depth, I want to remind you basically of Algebra 1 and say, if you need to sketch a graph, you can always fall back on a table, right? I know it's kind of silly for me to actually write down, but I think it's important for you to remember. I even have calculus kids sometimes. They did a group project or a group assignment as like a matching thing with crazy hard functions, and what did I remind them? Worst comes to worst, start making a table. If you get on an assessment and you don't know how to visualize the graph, worst comes to worst, make a table. Now, you could obviously do the old-fashioned way of setting up. You have 2 columns, you have the x's and you have the y's, and you go ahead and solve. But for our purposes, for most occasions, it's probably going to be more space efficient if you do a sideways table. And technically in calc, that's going to be nicest as well. If you're able to, because just think, that'll take up 1 or 2 lines, whereas this would take up like what, 4, 5, 6 lines, depending on. So just for space, I would probably say that you might want to start doing, instead of an up and down table, a sideways table. That's just for getting you guys kind of used to it a little bit more. Yes, it is usually a last resort, but that does not mean it's a bad resort. It's better than failing on a problem. Okay. As you guys look at the 4 down below, what kind of function would be a good one for point plotting? Just read me the function. There might be more than one. Maybe. But I would hope, as we continue on, I would hope that these ones in your math repertoire, you'd be like, nah, that's a line, I got that, right? I would say not that one. Same thing. Point plotting, that's with a table. I'd say lines, hopefully y equals mx plus b, we basically have. Oh, got it. Now, which ones would be good for point plotting, aka actually making a table? Both of them, kind of, right? I would definitely say that one. This is when the calculus kids get messed up. It's actually going to be the top half of the circle with a radius of square root of 6. We'll talk more about that when we get there as to why it is that. But that would be a great one for point plotting. A lot of kids would get that messed up. This one might also, although some of you are like, it's not too bad. It's a parabola, it's facing up, and I could factor and figure out the zeros are 0 and 3, so I can kind of figure out where he's supposed to be going-ish. But once again, probably at some point, it might be nice to be able to figure out a few points of that one as well. So yeah, I would pretty much agree with that. Definitely the square root, maybe the quadratic as well. Computer doesn't like me today. Unless we do some graphing. These are the ones that you've definitely seen before. It's just ones that we so easily mess up. You know, intercept. Intercept sounds like intersect. Intersect where it intersects the x and y axis, specifically when we're talking about intercepts. What is true when there is a point intersecting the x-axis? Do we know the x value, or is that still to be determined? Do we know the y value, or is that still to be determined? What do we know about an x-intercept? Yeah.
So it crosses the x, right?
Yeah.
The line passes through the x.
If it is a line, yeah, it could be where the line crosses through the x-axis. My question is, what do I automatically know for every x-intercept, and what can I set equal to 0 every single time?
Y is always 0 and x you don't know.
Good. Y is always 0, x is always some sort of constant I have to find. I'll just label an A. What do I mean by that? Remember, there is a tick mark. If it's hitting the x-axis, there is a tick mark on the x. There is an x value. But the y has not risen off the axis at all. Y is just 0. Whereas the y-intercepts, it hasn't gone right or left at all. It's only gone up or down. So once you know one, most of you know the other, and that now the x is going to be 0 and the y is going to be a constant. Why am I actually having you write that? Because that's exactly how you solve for it, right? Set y equal to 0, solve for x. Or similarly, for the y-intercept, set x equal to 0, solve for y. Now, if they give you a graph, do you even have to be solving, or are you just looking at it? Just looking, right? So as you look at the graph below, I gave you the function and I gave you the graph itself. But for the x-intercept, you have two different ways of doing it. You can take the function and set y equal to 0. Hopefully you would know in order to do this x-intercept, you want to factor. Without that, you'd be in some trouble. But looking at the graph, it's way easier because what 3 points does it hit the x-axis at? Yeah. Would the factoring get us the exact same result? Pull out an x, there's 1. X squared minus 4, x plus 2, x minus 2. Yes, we need to review some factoring, but whether you do the math of setting y equal to 0, whether you look at the graph, you should get the exact same result. What's the y-intercept? So can there be an x-intercept and a y-intercept in the exact same place? Yeah, of course there can. You would set x equal to 0 and you solve. Kiddos, we did not finish 1.2. Oh, this homework isn't due entirely done by tomorrow. But, should you get a start on it? The answer is yes. So, what is homework tonight? Start. So when someone asks you in the hallway after school, what's homework for pre-cal? What are you going to say? Start. You're not going to say, leave it till later. We don't encourage procrastination. Bye, cool kids. Go to nutrition. I will see you later. Those of you who didn't have all your notebooks and stuff today, please get them all set up. That way you don't have to worry about being behind, right?
I had a question about the notes. So I